Yo, what's up, y'all? First off, we're just gonna go on and get into it. Alright? We all know the song. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. And most of the time we see this and say that don't go with this. Which is sensible. But this is a twofold thing. For one, the show, alright, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you offended at the fact that this is in close proximity to this, that might be part of a slight problem. And the only reason I say that is not to desecrate the word, but this book right here, just like the image that we know of as Jesus, we idolize this book. And y'all excuse that beat, my phone always dying. But we idolize it, and I need y'all to kind of just take this in with me, because it just came to me when I started recording this. We idolize this book more than we utilize this book. We're idolizing. If y'all familiar with certain texts in the Bible, idols, they don't move. They don't have any spirits on them. The people have to move the idols. The spirit is supposed to move the vessel, if you dig what I'm saying. Alright. Then the other reason I put this on up here, aside from the whole idolizing the word thing, is to show transparency. Because I do drink. I ain't gonna front. It's all about being in control of what we use instead of letting what we use control us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, in the Bible, there's a few passages that mention giving wines to your friend if they in a sorrowful state. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but y'all can look through there. But the main thing I want to show today, because this is, I feel like this is a beautiful thing, man, and thank God for it. Yeah, I already know some folk gonna say, man, you up there drinking that beer and talking about God and talking about the Bible that don't go together. I'm sorry, man. I can't help perspective. But if that's your perspective, I understand. I can dig. I can't I can't change who I am. But this is the thing I want to show, right? All right. Now this Bible, just like any other book, it's a book. But the construction of it, this is the thing I want to show. Now, the Bible is not made vertically. It's made horizontally. And some folks gonna probably say it's a stretch, but just roll with me right quick. Alright, now this Bible is made horizontally. On top of that, you have an Old Testament and you have a New Testament. The thing I want to get to today is the parallel between Abraham and God. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and some of y'all want to, feel free, throw some scriptures in the comments, so whatever you might want to do. But God made a covenant with Abraham, same way He made a covenant with Noah, and it's very interesting when you look at the covenants that God made with certain people who were proclaimed holy. You know what I'm saying? The interesting thing about the covenant with Abraham and the parallels between it. Alright. Abraham had two sons. He had Ishmael first, which was... Okay, now if we go into the English, we usually start reading from left to right. That kind of goes against other... the way other people read across the world, if I'm not mistaken. I think they read from right to left. And right from right to left. But pretty much this thing I'm getting at. Abraham had Ishmael first. And I'm not going to get too deep into the story. I encourage you to open the Bible, you know what I'm saying? And shoot, you could go to Google first if you want to. And then let that be your introduction into certain things in the Bible. But Abraham had Ishmael because Sarah didn't have faith that she would be able to bear a child, even though God had already told them that they would be able to have a child. And faith is something, man. It really is. So, alright, pretty much. Abraham had two children. He had Ishmael first, and then he had Isaac. And Isaac was the child that Abraham had with Sarah, who was his, I guess you could say, appointed wife. He had Ishmael with Hagar. And now he technically wasn't supposed to be getting with Hagar. And shout out to my homeboy CT. Maybe we can do something on that later on. You know, on some what? Hopefully he already know where I'm going with it. But yeah, if God lays it on us, we can do some further explanation on that later on. But Abraham had Ishmael with Hagar, who was, y'all don't quote me on it. Once again, I encourage you to do research on it. I believe she was a concubine or maybe a servant. But anyway, she wasn't technically his wife. The parallel with this though, Isaac was his, kind of sad to say, Isaac was his favorite child, I guess you could say, simply because of the fact that Isaac was the child from his union with Sarah, the woman he was actually married to. When you go into the story of Isaac, if y'all are familiar with it, there was a part in the Bible about the binding of Isaac. Alright, Abraham took his son Isaac to be sacrificed. And I'm going to go on and just be real. A lot of folks, this is where a lot of people start having doubts about God and that whole thing, because it's like, why would he tell somebody to sacrifice their child? And from my understanding, and thank God for it, I'm just going to share with y'all what was shared with me. As trippy as that might sound, I ain't trying to sound like I'm no different than nobody else. And once again, sorry for the beeps. My phone always down. But the reason that Isaac was bonded and chosen as a sacrifice, quote unquote, because he never was truly sacrificed, and released from being a sacrifice, is because it's a parallel between the covenant of Abraham and God. Abraham was going to be the father Abraham, had many sons, and many sons had father Abraham. So many nations was going to come from Abraham. From the side of Ishmael, which later became the Muslims, and from the side of Isaac, which, if I'm not mistaken, both of them started out from the Hebrew, and then when Isaac came along, and later on in the religious progression, I guess you could say, over time, it stemmed down to Christianity, to what we have today. But the thing that's so interesting about it, God has two hands. He has a left hand and a right hand. The left hand is justice and the right hand is mercy. Now, when we open up this book, we have a left hand side and a right hand side. You have an Old Testament and a New Testament. For the most part, the Old Testament is all about, and yeah, I got a lot of stuff in there to mark, but the Old Testament is mostly about justice and the law. The right side, the New Testament, is mostly about mercy and forgiveness. But it's all part of a completion. It's two sides to it. Mercy and justice. Ishmael, in my personal understanding, my personal perspective, Ishmael being the bloodline of the Muslims, if you really look at history, most of the time the Muslims, they ain't asking no questions. And they ain't no offense to the Muslims, but they just have a more strict discipline to their understandings of God, if you understand what I'm saying. And when you go to the Christian side, you know, we got to ask forgiveness for the crusades and all that craziness. I don't think that got nothing to do with God. I feel like that's man with personal agendas using God to get their means accomplished. But on the right side, when you come to the Christianity, it's more mercy. You know what I'm saying? And you think about like all the charitable acts the Christians are supposed to represent. And I say supposed to because a lot of times we fall as Christians, and I'm saying we because I try to, you know, I ain't gonna say I don't get it right. I know I don't get it right all the time. I do some things that you know, they say, what would Jesus do? I know he probably wouldn't do some things that I do, but for the most part, man, I strive to do more things that are more Christ-like, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to wickedness, if that makes sense. But, you know what I'm saying, the mercy, the forgiveness, the understanding, the peace, it's a lot of aspects to it, man. So, I guess in short, and that's another thing that's so interesting. Isaac got married to a chick named Rebecca. Now, when you break down the name Rebecca, it means to tie, to bind, to loosely tie down, I believe. But it's something like that. So it's kind of interesting that part of his life was to represent being bound, with Abraham binding him for the perceived sacrifice that didn't have to happen. And another parallel between that, Isaac's life was spared. You know what I'm saying? Just like Yeshua, Jesus' life was spared. Even though he died in the physical, he died in a sense. Isaac figuratively died. You know what I'm saying? But he still survived. Same way with the spirit of Yeshua. So, I hope that ain't too far out there. I hope it brings some understanding to anyone who's looking for understanding, especially as far as this text go. And I just want to say, man, anybody who's seeking truth and love and peace and happiness, it's not up to me to determine your path. You know what I'm saying? I feel like God got me on the path of the Judeo-Christian, but I do find understanding in other traditions, other religions, other understandings. Just as long as the true eternal, the eternal I am, that spirit, the spirit of truth, just as long as it can lead us to more understanding, to more wisdom and more compassion and the good things, the fruit of the spirit, you know what I'm saying? I feel like that's where it's at, man. He said he was I am. When Moses asked what to tell the people, which God spoke to him, he said, I am. Tell them I am that I am. And here we are as people, man. We so conflicted. We throwing all these other different titles and bringing all these extra different rituals and routines to the situation. And he said worship in spirit and truth, man. So from the heart, man, we got to just yield our hearts for more understanding to the true eternal I am. You know what I'm saying? It's so easy for us to get blinded. Once again, I can't tell y'all what to believe in. You know what I'm saying? Everybody got a certain path, a certain journey that they're going on. So I just pray that, the true eternal, you know what I'm saying, the God, the universal being, the one who set everything into motion. From my personal perspective and understanding, which agrees with other people's personal understandings, you know what I'm saying? Whether you be Christian, Muslim, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? I feel like shout out to my homegirl, Shelly, too. We all trying to get the same thing. We just confused in the mix of it. Y'all stay up, y'all stay blessed, and I hope everything go good. Y'all have a great weekend. Peace.